Do you ever feel like your butt is just suspended in air as you try to bring those hips down to your heels? Or do you ever feel like you need to bring those hips higher just to be able to breathe? Are you wanting to bring those legs in narrow to progress your child's pose, but feel like your belly is going to get in the way? Then this yoga hack child's pose video is for you. So let's do some learning. Now, in the most simplest terms, what is happening in a child's pose is we're attempting to bring our knee to our chest. Now, there's certain genuine ranges of motion that need to happen in order for this to occur. The femur within the hip socket needs to be able to externally rotate, then internally rotate, and then externally rotate again to get that femur as close to the hip as possible. Now, because most people are in some form of anterior pelvic tilt, this limits the ability for that femur to go into genuine internal rotation, because it literally hits bone against bone. Now, in order to compensate for this, the femur naturally goes more externally rotated. So that allows for a faking of internal rotation. So if it's out more, then it has room to go in, but it's not going into that genuine range of motion. Because of this faking of internal rotation, that is why the most common modification cue in child's pose is just to spread your knees wider. So that gives you the ability to go through that range of internally rotating and then externally rotating again. It also allows for more room for your belly to drop between your legs. And that's why it feels like if you bring your legs closer, your belly is going to get in the way. But it's not actually your belly that is in the way. When you bring that leg in through the fake, it's anteriorly tilted, and you go through that fake external rotation and that fake internal rotation, your bone literally hits your pelvis where it can't go further. This causes the restriction. Now, the other part that feels like the belly is actually your rib cage. And so we need to discuss what actually the purpose of child's pose is to understand this part. So child's pose is meant to constrict and put pressure on your belly and your low rib cage. So you definitely feel that if you have your knees aligned with your hips and you come forward. You also feel it, though, even when your legs are out wide. You feel that compression happening here. And that is what it's supposed to do. But the reason why most people feel like they can't breathe is because that is the only area that they can breathe. So the rib cage is supposed to expand out in 360 degrees. So if we have compression in our front, we should be able to then send our breath more into the back of our rib cage, expanding it out, allowing us to breathe. But due to compression and compensations that happen with our daily life, we lose that ability to expand our back of our rib cage. So the combining of those two things is what makes that feeling that your belly is getting in the way. So those are the things our hacks are going to address. It's going to help us get into our back of our rib cage, help our pelvis come out of that anterior pelvic tilt, and most specifically, we're going to be working on the ability for the femur to come in and out of internal and external rotation, hopefully in a more genuine range of motion. So that is what our hacks are going to do today. So we're going to need a chair. I'm going to use a chair. You can always do this at a table, but I find a chair on the floor gets the most benefit here. And we're going to sit cross-legged. We're going to find both of our sit bones. Start by stacking our shoulders over our hips, ears over our shoulders. And then we're going to bring our elbows in next to our chest and then scoop them up. And then we're just going to come forward so we can get the back of our arm, our tricep, down onto the chair. From here, We're going to inhale. Feel the shoulder blades separate in the back. And exhale. As you exhale, bring your rib cage down towards your belt line. Inhale. Separate that rib cage. Exhale. Bring that rib cage down. As you bring that rib cage down, you might feel your tailbone drop a little bit more to the mat. So you kind of want to feel like you're getting a nice rounding through your spine. So you might need a little bit of a pelvic tuck, posterior pelvic tuck here. But you want to make sure you're not clenching your glutes. It should be nice and relaxed. But we'll do this for about 5 breaths, which is about the time that we've done. And then we're going to switch the cross of our legs. And this side should be the more difficult because we usually have one way we cross our legs and the other side is a bit more different. So you find, again, each of those sit bones, stack shoulders and ears, scoop up and come forward. Maybe do that little posterior tuck if you need a little bit more rounding to come out of that anterior pelvic tilt. Gentle pressure onto the chair, just 2 effort. Inhale, feel that expansion. Exhale, bringing your rib cage down the belt line. And we'll do this side again for another about 5 breaths. Full inhale. Exhaling all that air as you bring that rib cage down till you have no more air out to breathe out. And after we do 5 breaths, we got one more progression that we're going to do. So 2 ways to do this. First way to do it is if you can get your legs underneath your chair. You can do the straight leg, bringing it here. Or if that feels too easy or you have more hip flexion, you can bend your knees and bring your elbows on top of your knees and doing the same thing. Make sure you're tucking your chin, lifting out of the back of your head. It's easy to start craning up like that. That's kind of defeating the point of the breath because we want to send the breath into the rib cage. And that chin coming up is allowing more movement in the neck. We'll just do this for about 5 breaths. You can do it up to 10, 15 breaths, depending on how tight, how much. And we'll release. So that was our posture and breath hack. Next, we're going to go to our strength hack. So I'm going to be using a ball and a loop, but you don't need these. Using your hand to press into your thigh gives about the same amount of strength training. So whichever you wish to use, but you're going to need a wall. And what we're going to do at the wall is you're going to straighten your legs and you're going to scoot your butt back until you can get your pelvis and the top of your hips against that wall. And then you want to find the bottom of your rib cage. I'm not as concerned about the upper part, but I do want the top of your hips and the bottom of your rib cage firmly against the wall through the entirety of these exercises. So from here, we're just going to bend our knees and see if you can get your foot flat. So since this is keeping you from going into anterior pelvic tilt, you might find that you don't have a lot of hip flexion, and that's okay. Most people have about 60. So if you start at 60, that's fine. And then the goal as we strengthen and open up will be to get our knees as close as possible to our chest. So we're going to be starting by placing a pillow or a ball or just using your hands in that inner thigh. So that ball should be not at the knee, more in the center of your thigh if you're using a ball or a pillow. Your knees need to be in line with your hips. So yes, you might be able to get your knees further back if you walk them out, but we're trying to get that genuine internal rotation. So it's better to have your legs longer than wider. So from here, we're going to work on internal rotation. We're going to be taking the knee in, pressing into that ball or pillow, or if you have your hand, you're going to press in. So what I want you to think about is here's your leg, here is the top corner of your leg. That leg is that point is rotating in and pressing into the ball or hand. You're keeping contact with the foot. Heel, ball of your big toe, ball of your little toe as you come in and as you come center. Sometimes it's helpful to take your hand right below the knee and actually help with that twisting action. So we're not just pressing in, we're rotating in. Keeping that outside edge of your toe, ball of your little toe down as you press into that big toe. And we're going to do this for about 8 times for the video. You can go up to like 16. And then we're going to go the other side. Make sure both hip bones are down, rib back, top of your hips pressing into the wall, bottom of your rib cage pressing on the wall. Don't lose those contacts. And then going to the other side, pressing in. This knee is staying stable, tracking with that hip. And after you've done some, if you're at that 60 degrees, you might try to see if you can walk your legs a little closer and then maybe repeat it until you can get those legs close. At least about so this is 60. We want to come up to maybe about 75, 80 degrees. Doesn't have to be right next to your chest, but then we're going to work on external rotation. So again, you can use your hand or you can use a light loop to come around your knees, above your knees. But you really want to work, if you're having trouble getting your knees this high, you want to stay working on the internal rotation until you're able to get up further to here. So you have that outside pressure or pressing on your hand, and then keeping, again, those 3 points of contact with your foot. You're going to open up, press into that inside edge of your heel, and close. Again, taking your hand onto your leg and helping it rotate out and in helps. I know it's tempting to go further and let that foot lift, but you're really going to be working more if you're pressing into that ball of your big toe and your inside edge of your heel. And then check to see if you're shifting weight into here, maybe letting one hip pop up, losing that contact with the wall. You want to make sure we're keeping that contact to address that anterior pelvic tilt. So we'll do a few on this side and then the other side. Let's do a couple more on this side. And there we go. There's our strength hat, strengthening our genuine internal rotation and external rotation needed for that last part of that child's pose while addressing that anterior pelvic tilt. So next, we're going to go to our mobility drill. Now, if you're having trouble maintaining that neutral spine that you have on the wall, you can do this next to the wall and just walk your feet out, and we're just going to drop our knees side to side. You can let your feet lift here. And then if you feel like you have that control of being able to hold that neutral stack and not dump back into that anterior pelvic tilt, you can come away from the wall and then we can play with this movement. So away from the wall, you still want to have that good neutral stack where your tailbone's coming down towards the ground. Shoulders are stacked over hips, ears over shoulders, and then you can just drop back our knees back and forwards. And then if you're ready to progress, you can think about letting that back hip lift a little bit so you can get your knees down to the ground, coming center, and going to the other side. So if this feels good and you can get your knees all the way down, you can think about shifting that stack forward. So shifting forward and then pressing knee to ankle into the ground, knee and ankle into the ground. So you have it nice and firm, and then you shift to back center, coming to the other side, sitting up tall, pressing down. So just alternating that shift forward, pressing down, back neutral center, shifting forward. And the last little add-on that you can do is if you can take your chest and then square it more towards that front knee, looking over, coming center, getting that full twist. So we'll just do that a few times. With this movement, you're going to walk a little bit. Your hips are going to kind of walk forward. So you might have to set up, especially if you're using the wall. You are going to walk away from the wall. Just do get each side one more time. And then let's check out where our child's pose is after that work. Bringing those knees out wide, or maybe seeing if you can get them more narrow. And then just coming down, sending those hips towards your heels, relaxing your forehead down to the mat. And we have our child's pose. So thank you for joining me in this yoga hack child's pose videos. If you want to see more of our hacks, you can check out our yoga hack playlist. So I hope this helped, and I hope to see you in another video.